Sonic has had an interesting history of lost content in games that never seen the light of day. There are tons of leaked early builds and unused content of these games, and I decided, why not go over them? I'm not going to go over every prototype or unused things, but I'll only cover the notable ones. There's a lot of cool stuff and interesting things in here. Hey guys, I just wanted to say, make sure to like and subscribe the video. I'm trying to reach 3,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and it'll be a big help if you subscribe. Thank you. Now let's move on to Sonic 1. In 1990, Sega needed to make a new mascot for their company to compete with Nintendo's juggernaut, Mario. They had a few ideas, a rabbit that can grab stuff with its ears, Dr. Eggman, and even an armadillo. But Sonic's character designer, Naoto Oshima, created Mr. Needlemouse, which we all know became Sonic. In some concept art of the game, we can see Sonic was going to be in a band, and he was going to even have a human girlfriend way before Sonic 06. Sonic was first shown off to the public at the 1990 Tokyo Toy Show. This screenshot is the only thing we know from it. As of now, this build of the game is completely lost. Not even Sega has this build, so it's safe to say this demo is lost forever. But there is one later Sonic 1 prototype build that was discovered in 2021. The ROM was leaked on the internet by Hidden Palace, so why don't we have a look at it? This version has a lot of differences. For starters, the level names. The order is way different than the final version. Labyrinth Zone was meant to be the second level, and thank God that didn't happen. Starlight Zone was meant to be after Spring Yard Zone. Scrap Brain Zone was originally called Clockwork Zone or Clockwork Zone, and Spring Yard was originally called Sparkling Zone. From what I've played of this prototype, the levels are way more challenging than the final version. In Green Hill, there's this weird wrecking ball Sonic can push to destroy enemies. I guess this was removed because the ball was kinda in the way. There are more spikes around this time, and for some reason you can still take damage from them while in invincibility. You gain a life by getting 50 rings instead of 100, which I'm glad they changed. There is no special stage ring after beating the stage because I'm guessing they weren't done with them yet. Green Hill is pretty much the same with a few differences like less rings and more spikes. The boss is the same too. Marble Zone is way harder and boring in this build. It really makes me appreciate the final version. Also, they have whatever this thing is. When Sonic completes the stage, he just stands there instead of running off. He even has a victory pose when he jumps. Sonic Mania later added this. There is no boss at the end of Act 3 in Marble Zone, most likely because it wasn't done yet. Next stage is Spring Yard, aka Sparkling Zone. This stage looks way different than the final version, mostly with the backdrop. It's more casino themed. Act 2 and Act 3 is very unfinished, and you most likely have to use debug mode to complete the stage. Next is Starlight Zone. This stage has no enemies yet, and the slopes and loops can be jank sometimes. Labyrinth Zone, as you can see, is very unfinished too. There is no water, no enemies, or no rings. I think the layout is almost exactly the same as the final version, and Act 3 just leads you back to Green Hill Zone. Finally, there is Clockwork Zone. The backdrop is completely different, and there are no enemies or objects in the stage, just the basic layout. The special stages are also pretty different since there's no Chaos and Road to collect, and you gotta rotate the stage. And that's all from the early build. There is some more unused stuff still found in the game's files, like unused sprites. There's an unused enemy named Splats the Bunny who later appeared in Sonic Mania. There's some unused sprites of a monitor power-up, which is a pair of goggles. Some speculate this was meant to help Sonic breathe longer underwater. And then there's this unused sprite of a Dark Sonic, probably meant for if Sonic dies in the lava. Well, that was pretty much most of the stuff that was unused in Sonic 1. Let's move on to Sonic 2. Sonic 2 was originally going to be a much longer game. Sonic CD and Sonic 2 were going to be one game, but they got separated. Sonic CD was being worked on in Japan, and Sonic 2 was being worked on in America. Sonic 2 has several prototypes, but I'll be only covering two. The Nick Arcade build and the Simon Y prototype. First with the Nick Arcade build. The Nick Arcade prototype was the demo that was showcased on the TV show known as Nick Arcade in 1992, where they would do various challenges in games. First off, the title screen is way different, and I much prefer the final version. Emerald Hill is the first stage as usual, but for some reason, Starlight Zone music is playing. I guess they weren't nearly done with the soundtrack yet. Sonic has a different sprite in this version, and his running animation was different, which was again reused in Sonic Mania. You can't rev up the spin dash, and it's pretty similar to Sonic CD's spin dash. There are these snail-like enemies which went unused in the final version. Sonic is slower in this build because he has the Sonic 1 speed cap, and Sonic falls after hitting the wall, and I am very glad they removed that because that would have been super annoying. Tails is not present present yet in this game. The goalpost with Sonic staring at your soul. I don't know whose idea was to have this in the first place, but glad they removed it. It looks creepy. There's not much changes to the level design in Emerald Hill, and that is the only playable stage normally. We can access the level select. The list of levels are just the zones from Sonic 1, so it looks like this was very early. Selecting Green Hill just takes you to Green Hill Zone with broken physics and 2-player mode for some reason. This is pretty much unplayable. Marble Zone is an early layout of Chemical Plant in 2-player mode again, with Marble Zone music playing. All of the sprites are corrupted and you can't get very far. While waiting on a title screen, a demo will play of a more completed version of Chemical Plant. Spring Yard takes you to a scrapped level known as Hidden Palace Zone, so I guess this is how people first found out about this level. This stage would later return as a secret in the 2013 remaster of Sonic 2 and Sonic Origins. This stage is complete, for the most part. Going in Act 2 just makes you fall through the floor. Labyrinth Zone is just a bunch of corrupted sprites, so next. Starlight Zone just takes you to Emerald Hill Zone again, and Scrap Brain takes us to an early version of Hilltop Zone in 2-player mode. There are no enemies or anything, and you can't get very far. Going to Final Zone takes us to Hilltop Zone again, but the game crashes with the pink screen. Nice. And the special stage just freezes the game. As we can see, this build is very unfinished. Let's try the Simon Y prototype. This prototype was stolen from a toy fair in New York in 1992 and then was distributed on bootleg Mega Drive cartridges across Asia and South America. Some thought this was the final game. The ROM was leaked online in 1998 by the user Simon Y, which is why it's called the Simon Y prototype. The title screen is the same as the last build, and the first stage we started off with is surprisingly Aquatic Ruin. It looks like the soundtrack is almost done. There's no enemies here at all and no boss. I think the layout is pretty much the same, and thank God they got rid of that old signpost. Tails is present this time, and for some reason, if Tails gets hit, he loses rings. Good thing they removed that feature because that would have been the most annoying thing ever. Next stage is Chemical Plant, and it's a bit more complete this time without any enemies again. The physics are still broken here and there, but it's playable. Next stage is Hilltop Zone. What is up with this level order? Everything's pretty much the same, but of course without any enemies. Emerald Hill is up next, and it's the most completed stage out of all of them. The invincibility theme is also different here. It instead plays the Supersonic theme, and for some reason, it continues to play even when the invincibility is done. The boss here is pretty much the same too with the Eggmobile. After Emerald Hill, the game just ends. Back to the title screen. So I guess it only has 4 stages. Or does it? Using the level select code on the title screen, we get a list of all the stages. Green Hill, Wood Zone, Metropolis Zone, Hilltop Zone, Hidden Palace Zone, Oil Ocean Zone, Dust Hill Zone, Casino Night Zone, Chemical Plant, Genocide City Zone, Neo Green Hill Zone, and Death Egg Zone. That is a lot of stages. Most are unused. I'm not going to go too in depth into every stage since Sonic 2 has a lot of scrap stages, but I'll only talk about the important ones. Loading Green Hill Zone just takes you to the multiplayer mode of Emerald Hill. Wood Zone is a forest level that takes place on a giant tree. It's mostly corrupted and the stage does not work. There have been fan ROM hacks that fixed the stage though. Hidden Palace Zone is mostly the same as the last prototype, except this time, when you get 100 rings, it plays this for some reason. It seems to be an early version of the Death Egg theme. This kinda shook me at first because it came out of nowhere. Dust Hill Zone is just multiplayer Mystic Cave Zone from the final game. However, this stage was meant to be a desert level, and it was even meant to return in the 2011 remaster of Sonic CD. Casino Night was very different, and the colors are mostly pink. Genocide City Zone is just a stage that has an infinite bombless pit. You can probably guess why this stage was scrapped. It would have been a bit too dark for a kid's game. There is also fan recreations of this stage. And finally, Neo Green Hill Zone is just Aquatic Ruin. I'm guessing Neo Green Hill was just the original name for this stage. Phew. And that's all for Sonic 2's prototype and unused content. There was a ton of things cut from this game, and more than I was expecting, honestly. Makes me wonder how different this game was going to be when it was still meant to be Sonic CD. Speaking of Sonic CD, After the separation of Sonic 2 and CD, Sega of Japan began work on a new Sonic game for Sega's new expansion for the Genesis, the Sega CD. Not many people owned this console back then, and people who have owned it agree that Sonic CD is the best game on that console, probably because there weren't many. Sonic CD has a very interesting development cycle. See, it was planned to be a Sega CD port of Sonic 1 with a new CD quality soundtrack and improved graphics, which is probably why the levels in this game are very similar to Sonic 1. Sonic CD began development in 1992 after the release of Sonic 2 in America, and there are surprisingly a few prototypes out. We'll be looking at two of them again, and this one is from December 4th, 1992. This one is pretty short. The title screen is pretty different. There's an option for new game and time attack mode. The music that's playing is different too, which seems to be a shorter version of the animated opening theme. It even credits the vocalist on the bottom right. We also see the early name for the game, which is CD Sonic the Hedgehog, with a golden Sega logo. There's only one zone with two acts, and it's Palm Tree Panic. Well, in this case, the stage is called Salad Plain. What a weird name for this level. The game pretty much plays the same, and the level design isn't much different except for this weird blue ring boxes that give Sonic invincibility and speed shoes. Maybe it was meant to be an early version of Super Sonic. We also have an early version of the Palm Tree Panic Pass theme, and it sounds pretty good. One thing I'm glad they changed was the time traveling sound effect, because it sounds absolutely horrible compared to the final version. Sonic is missing his Super P-Led and Spring animation. The goal sign says "you save" for some reason. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. After completing both acts, we get a coming soon screen with the Good Future of Palm Tree Panic playing. So this must have been a very early build of the game where the rest of the stages weren't implemented yet. Going on to time attack mode, it takes you to a level select and refers to level names by round numbers. This is where it gets interesting. In the final game, there are only 7 zones / round, but here there are 8 in this version, so what is the missing round? Well, in the final version's game files, Collision Chaos is called Round 3, which is the second level of the game, which means there was a stage in between Palm Tree Panic and Collision Chaos planned. This makes sense because these levels are loosely based off of Sonic 1, and this Round 2 could have been Sonic CD's version of Marble Zone. Further proof of this existing is a few unused sprites of a boss and a few enemies in the final version of the game. To add on to that, there is concept art of an unused stage which many fans claim to be what Round 2 could have looked like. Not only that, but in the ending cutscene where it shows Sonic going through all the zones, we can see one that we've never played through. That's right, Round 2. The same enemies from the unused sprites are even there. As of now, we have no gameplay or build of R2 in Sonic CD, but someday I hope an earlier build than this one has Round 2 in it. Anyway, let's go on to the next prototype. Sonic CD, May 12, 1993 build. This version looks to be more complete, featuring all the levels playable. There's also different title screen music again, and it sounds really good. I honestly wish they kept it. The game has weird frame drops from time to time, and it includes this weird S monitor that gives Sonic invincibility and speed shoes again. I honestly don't know what's the point of these monitors. Maybe it was to help the devs test the game out faster. The time traveling backdrop was updated, some sound effects are missing, and the game ends with a coming soon after Title Tempest Act 3. Also, when Amy gets captured by Metal Sonic, he electrocutes her, which seems to be pretty gruesome. Surprisingly, the final boss is even here. I mean, this build was only 3 months before release, so it was pretty much close to completion. There's a few unused animations for Sonic, and one even has him sneezing. There's a few unused sprites for Amy too, and 2 voice clips for Sonic when unused.
Yeah! Alright!
But yeah, that's all of the unused content for Sonic CD. Let's move on to Sonic 3. Sonic 3, my all-time favorite Sonic game. Perfect level design, nice graphics, amazing music, and I don't think any other Sonic game will come close to topping it. Well, except for Sonic Mania. But I'm not here to talk about how good it is. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 started development in 1993, right after Sonic CD released in Japan. Sega wanted this game to top Sonic 2 in every way possible, but something terribly wrong happened. The game split into 2 again. Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles were meant to be one game, but because the storage of the Genesis console couldn't handle how large the game was, and Sega wanted the game to come out in time for a McDonald's promotion, they had to split the game into 2 parts. Sonic 3 released on February 2nd, 1994, while Sonic and Knuckles came out 8 months after. But it wasn't always meant to be that way. We are going to take a look at the November 3, 1993 build of Sonic 3. Oh my god, that title screen. It's honestly really funny to look at. Just a pre-rendered compressed Sonic looking at you like he's going to murder your whole family. Anyway, if you wait on this title screen, the opening cutscene will play and it's way different than the final version. Instead of Sonic going super and flying on the water until Knuckles punches him, he instead surfaces until Knuckles stops him and tells Sonic to follow him. I don't know what they were going for here since Knuckles is a villain in this game. Booting up the stage on the level select just has Knuckles standing there until he runs off. I've noticed that Knuckles' sprite looks way different, same with Sonic. Sonic's sprite is just the one from Sonic 2 with a darker shade of blue, and honestly, it looks cursing Sonic 2's sprite and Sonic 3. The layout of this stage is pretty normal except there is no giant rings. There is one thing that caught me off guard though. This game has a drop dash. Years before Sonic Mania came out. Christian Whitehead was asked about this on Twitter and he said it was just a coincidence. That's insane. But yeah, this prototype has quite a few small differences, mostly within the music. This build was before Sonic Team hired Michael Jackson to come on board to compose the music. The tracks that are different is Ice Cap, Carnival Night, and Launch Base. None of these tracks are as good as the Michael Jackson version in the full game, but some of these actually slap. Funny enough, the 1996 PC port used these old tracks in MIDI form. It wasn't until years later where Sonic fans found out those were just the demo versions. These tracks aren't even used in the recent Sonic Origins because of the copyright issues with Michael Jackson, but they aren't nearly as good. Anyway, there are major differences in this build. Like sometimes sound effects would glitch to the point where it's ear piercing.
That's the sound of 25 years of Sonic!
And sometimes the game would soft lock, causing me to go back to the level select. Speaking of level select, it seems like at one point the stage order was going to be different. Flying Battery Zone after Ice Cap? What? Other than that, everything was mostly normal. There are Sonic and Knuckles stages in this game, but they don't work. In fact, not even half of the stages are here. We have competition mode in this build, and I can't really say what was changed since I never really spent much time here in the actual game, but we also have special stages. They're here, but they are just tests for 3D effects. They were probably just a tech demo. You can rotate it, spin it, zoom in and out, and even stop it. It's pretty cool. Next are the bonus games, and they don't work. Just a bunch of jumbled up code. It was pretty cool to look at 3 of these games prototypes. I really love looking into development history of games. It's really nice to see how your favorite games are made and things that never seen the light of day. We still have a few more prototypes and unused content to go over. I'm gonna keep this one short, cause there's not much to go over other than the early gameplay build we got, but Sonic Crackers is a cancelled Sonic game that was set to release in 1995 on the Sega 32X. It was basically a beta version of Knuckles Chaotix, except you are Sonic and Tails. This was probably just a proof of concept. Oh boy, Sonic X-treme. You probably know the story already, but for the 2 of you who don't, Sonic X-treme was a cancelled 3D Sonic game that was going to release in holiday 1996 on the Sega Saturn. It was meant to compete with the likes of Super Mario 64 and Crash Bandicoot. There was even going to be a movie based off of this game. I'm not going to explain the whole story on how this game became cancelled because it is a long story, and there are multiple documentaries about this game, so you guys can just look at that. But my thoughts? This game looked like it would have been a pain to play. I mean, I know it's an early build, but Sonic looks so slippery and it looks like it would have been a pain to control. I know people get sick of the whole Sonic has had a rough transition to 3D, but the statement is somewhat true. Sonic didn't get a proper 3D game until 1998 with Sonic Adventure, and the previous attempts at Sonic in 3D has been cancelled. It definitely took a while, but I'm glad we got Sonic Adventure instead. Speaking of Sonic Adventure, in 1997, Sonic Team started work on their next Sonic game, Sonic & Knuckles RPG. Yeah, Sonic Adventure was originally going to be an RPG. It's like this kinda carry over to the final game with the hub worlds being very RPG-like. The director of Sonic RPG, Takashi Iizuka, wanted the game to have a bigger focus on story and wanted to expand on the Sonic lore. Eventually the game became a 3D platformer and it turned into the game we all know and love, Sonic Adventure. Sonic Adventure was first known by the public from a leak at E3 1998 with this screenshot. At first, everyone didn't know this was a Sonic game. It was thought to be an untitled motorcycle game. The screenshot is very blurry, so it's very hard to tell if it was a Sonic game. But of course, nowadays we know that it's a screenshot of Speed Highway. For this game, Sonic Team wanted a drastic change in tone for the Sonic series, so Sonic needed a major redesign to fit with the new millennia. There are a few early redesigns and oh my god, we totally dodged a bullet. The first two on the top looks fine, but what the heck is the one below the fourth one? If Sega went with that design, Sonic would probably not still be around today. The one on the top right is the one that was chosen since it's the closest to the design we have now. There's even more early redesigns for modern Sonic which looks the same as the one we have now but a bit shorter and with black eyes. Even the Japanese box art for Sonic 3D Blast kinda uses this design. But yeah, I'm glad with what we got at the end because Sonic's modern design is just too iconic. Plus the artist is Yuji Uekawa who makes debatably the best Sonic art. Sega should bring him back someday. Anyway, the first real prototype of Sonic Adventure could be the Sega Saturn game released since 1997 known as Sonic Jam, a collection of Sonic 1, 2, and 3. The game included a mode called Sonic World where you can run around a 3D environment and do various challenges. It has this early classic Sonic model which is the same one they used for the concept art in Sonic Adventure. It's definitely based on an early prototype of Sonic Adventure. Not only that, but in the Sky Chase level in Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast version, Sonic's model changes to the Sonic Jam version. Some call this model Saturn Sonic. To add on even more proof that Sonic Jam was meant to be SA1, in Sonic Adventure's files, the same spring model from Jam is found in the files. Sonic Team wanted a more realistic approach to this game, so they went out to South America for reference material. Sonic Team later started developing for Sega's new console, the Sega Dreamcast. They even took pictures to use as actual textures for the game. The game was first officially revealed on August 22nd, 1998 at the Tokyo International Forum. People got their first glance at the game and there is a lot of cool and new stuff in the footage that was shown too. The game looked way slower, the lighting looked different in some areas, and the stage, Windy Valley, was completely different. It was more open and green, and even Big the Cat was meant to be playable on this stage, which was not in the final game. It looks like you also would have been able to follow Froggy in the big missions too. That would have been way better than fishing for him. Anyway, in the footage where Tails transforms his plane, we can see they were still using their classic designs. I would love to see an alternate universe where they kept the classic designs. Definitely would be interesting. In the presentation, we got a demo version of the main theme song of Sonic Adventure, Open Your Heart. This version is pretty rough since it was before Crush 40 did the song, so just listen for yourself. Despite it sounded pretty laughable, it has its charm. Now let's go over some prototypes. There are quite a few, but I'll mostly be talking about the Sonic Adventure auto demo from October 16th, 1998. Now this demo is not playable normally, hence why it's called auto demo. It just plays a bunch of cutscenes in Japanese and a bit of gameplay. However, if you hack the game, you are able to access the level select. Unfortunately, I couldn't access it with Cheat Engine, and for some reason, no matter how hard I tried and I followed every step, it never works, so I'll be using YouTube footage for this one. One thing right off the bat that is different is the title screen. It's missing the water effects with a completely white background. Plus it plays a way shorter version of Open Your Heart. This character select menu gives me a lot of Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22 vibes. Time to go through the stages. There is a test stage called Practice 3, which is missing all of its textures with a lot of slopes. I'm guessing this test level was from an earlier build and it was corrupted in this one. There's even some textures in the game's file dating way back to November 1997. Next is Sonic's Emerald Coast and it's missing music. The camera angles are a bit different, objects are missing, and the stage is pretty jank from the looks of it. Loop-de-loops barely works here. Something about this Emerald Coast feels a bit, I don't know, soulless? Maybe because they added more special effects in the final version. The killer whale is even missing here. Sonic's idle animation is different here too, and the 1-up sound is just the sound that plays when you get a Chaos Emerald in the classic games. Big the Cat also has an Emerald Coast in this demo, and you spawn in this one cave for some reason. If you debug out of it, you can see the rest of the stage, and it seems to just be one section of Sonic's Emerald Coast. There's also a fish bait counter on the top right, which I'm not sure what it was going to be used for. Maybe you had a limited number of bait for Froggy? I don't know. Speed Highway is next, and there's not much changes here really. I mean, the music's a bit different, that's about it. Speed Highway ends after the running down building section. Tails' Speed Highway doesn't work. Knuckles' Speed Highway has this cool building that is not in the final version. Sonic's Red Mountain has zero lighting, same with Ice Cap. It also has these random wooden textures around the stage, and there are no falling icicles. Big's Ice Cap is mostly the exact same as Sonic's Ice Cap. Sonic's final egg is pretty different. Most of the enemies are gone, and there seems to be this duck enemy with no textures. Wonder what this enemy would have done. There's also this room with some corrupted textures. This is most likely an unused Act 4 of the stage. Amy is a bit faster in this demo, and for some reason, Zero makes menu sounds when you bully him. Weird. The Chow Garden is in this demo too, and they make different sounds. They sound kind of weird here. There is one Gamma stage, but it's not that much different from the final version, and that's pretty much the entire auto demo. There are other prototypes, but those are just for the 1999 localization version. Not much of a difference in terms of gameplay. There are some weird differences in the E3 build. Knuckles' voice actor was different, NPCs had weird dialogue, and some sound effects and voice clips are different. Some of these unused voice clips are reused in the DX version. There is also an entire early English script for this game's dialogue, but it was just small changes. Sonic Adventure had a very interesting development cycle. I would love to see earlier builds of this game when it was still in its testing phases. After the success that was Sonic Adventure, Sega needed to make a sequel. They began development on Sonic Adventure 2 in 1999, immediately after Sonic Adventure released in America. Sonic Team this time went out to San Francisco to get reference material for the game. You can tell because some levels in Sonic Adventure 2 are based off of it. At one point in development, Sega thought this would be the last Sonic game because Sega was falling out of the console market. Thankfully, Isao Okawa, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, saved Sega from going bankrupt. Sega revealed Sonic Adventure 2 to the public on May 11th, 2000 with screenshots of Sonic, Knuckles, and Dr. Eggman. Fans worried that Tails may not be playable. When asked about this, Yuji Naka would sometimes respond with, "Wait and see," or "Tails will not be in the game." Obviously, Tails did make it in the final game, but I think it was probably a last-minute decision. Later that year at E3, they released a trailer that revealed Shadow at the end of the trailer. There are a few differences in this trailer, like Sonic's running animation and the feature to do tricks off of hills. That would have been so cool, actually. We also see Sonic and Sky Rail, which is a Shadow exclusive stage. Shadow went through a few design changes. He was originally known as Terios the Hedgehog, and he looked even more similar to Sonic. Glad they didn't go through with this design because Shadow is just a way cooler looking character. Another character that was changed was Rouge the Bat, originally known as Nails the Bat. She looks more like Amy, to be honest. I forgot to mention there was one more early design for Shadow who really looks a lot like Blaze the Cat, so maybe they reused the design for Sonic Rush. There was also an early logo for the game. It looks pretty good, but I much prefer the final version's logo. The game's story was going to go through a major change. There was originally going to be multiple routes you can take, which results in different endings. This was later revisited in Shadow the Hedgehog. There are a few prototypes of this game, and we'll be taking a look at the earliest one, Sonic Adventure 2 The Trial. This demo was bundled in with Phantasy Star Online on the Dreamcast on November 15th, 2000. So let's jump right in. This game starts with telling you it's a work in progress build and you may run into a few bugs. After the title screen, we get the beginning cutscene. The language is in Japanese and the dialogue is a bit different. The guy in the helicopter even says "what the hell," which kinda took me by surprise at first. In the final version, this was changed to "what in the world." City Escape is mostly the same except for the music. It's missing its lyrics lyrics with a guitar covering for them. This early version of City Escape later inspired classic Sonic's City Escape in Sonic Generations. You may notice something different about Sonic though. His shoes are different from the final release. Sonic wore soap shoes, while in this build, he wears his normal shoes. Sonic's shoes were changed to soap because Sega had a deal with soap to let Sonic wear them in the game. It's pretty fitting since soap shoes are made for grinding. But yeah, this demo isn't anything exactly special. The only stage is City Escape, and what's after is a teaser telling you it's coming out in 2001. But there are some extra stuff laying in the files. There is some unused graphics and stuff, but there is also an early version of the main theme, Live and Learn. As you heard, that version is very unfinished. The lyrics are gone and replaced with a MIDI flute. This version was made to help the vocalist with how the lyrics should sound in the song. Hearing the flute might suggest that this song was going to have different lyrics. There was also some unused voice clips for Sonic and Shadow screaming. I'm guessing this was going to be used if one of them died in the final boss. This isn't the only prototype we'll be covering. Next, we will talk about the March 8th, 2001 build. This demo includes all of the playable characters, 2 stages for Sonic, and 1 stage for the rest. This build was made during the localization phase, so some of the English dub is in here. Only some. These cutscenes are weird, I swear, something you would see in an SA2 randomizer.
I like running flights, no food or movies. This game of tag is boring. I'm out of here.
What was that all about?
I did that to prevent the Master Emerald from being stolen, you idiot. If it's in pieces, I can restore it. And by the way, that's not your emerald. You need to take it back to the base.
Signal Alpha 2, heading due south over the city. En route, everything's a go.
There's no mistake about it. This must be the...
盗み出しといて何言ってやがる。いいか、そのマスターエメラルドにはカオスエメラルドの暴走を止めるという重要な役目があって、おい。
That emerald's mine. Look who's calling who a thief.
This demo also has a 2-player mode, and it makes the game drop frames for some reason. Guess they weren't done with the optimization for it yet. Also, for some reason, when I started City Escape, this weird beeping noise played throughout the entire stage. But yeah, there are more prototype builds, but they are mostly close to the final game. Sonic Adventure 2 would later release to be claimed as one of the best Sonic games of all time.
What goes up must come down. Yeah, my feet don't touch the ground. See the world spinning upside down. A mighty crash without a sound.
In 2001, Sega announced they're leaving the console market. Sonic Adventure 2 was meant to be their last game for the Dreamcast. After Sega went third party, they needed to find a way to keep the Sonic brand and company alive. So they started working with Nintendo to release games on their newly released GameCube and Game Boy Advance at the time. In December of 2001, Sega released both Sonic Advance and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, an enhanced port of Sonic Adventure 2 with some new features. Shortly after the release of SA2 Battle, Sonic Team began brainstorming ideas for their next project. They wanted a Sonic game to appeal to everyone and introduce people to the series. Not only would this be on the GameCube, it would be on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox as well. April 2002 is when Sonic Team started development on Sonic Heroes. If you know me, I love Sonic Heroes, so looking into the development of this game will be very interesting. This game surprisingly was going to be way different from the final. The list of playable characters that were originally planned was insane. I mean, instead of 4 playable teams, it was going to have 6, so that's like 18 playable characters. So I'm gonna list the playable characters, so get ready for this, it's pretty crazy. The list of playable characters were Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, Amy, Cream, and Rouge, Chaos, E102 Gamma, Big, SBO, Charmy, Vector, Fang, Bean, and Bark, and finally, Metal Sonic, Ray, and Mighty. What? There were going to be over 18 playable characters instead of 12, and most of these characters are forgotten Sonic characters. Man, I wish that actually happened, but I guess 18 playable characters in a platformer is a bit too much. Also, Chaos and E102 Gamma were meant to come back, which is pretty weird. I guess that's why they are in Sonic Battle as playable characters? I mean, they released the same year. But if Metal Sonic was meant to be playable, does that mean the villain was just going to be Dr. Eggman? I don't know. You might have noticed Shadow isn't in there like in the final game. Well, that's because Shadow died at the end of Sonic Adventure 2 and he was meant to stay dead, never coming back. But fans begged Sega to bring him back since Shadow was one of the most popular characters at the time. So yeah, the teams were scaled down to only 4 teams, and I am pretty glad they at least kept Team Chaotix in the game. Sonic Team planned to release the game in 2003, and they called it the Year of Sonic. Sonic was going even more multimedia. He got a new anime, there was a McDonald's tie-in, and he even had 2 more games that year, which is Sonic Pinball Party and Sonic Battle. Sonic Heroes kinda had a trouble with development. Iizuka talked about his experience working on the level design for his game. The game had 2 level designers and one of them was Iizuka. The other level designer became sick, so it was all up to Iizuka. He worked constantly on it and he never slept, which made him lose 22 pounds while working on the game. Having only 2 level designers in a game is crazy. There is also some really cool concept art and storyboard for the cutscenes. They are very low quality, of course, because they're old, but they still look pretty cool. I really like how Sonic looks here. There are also some concept art for the levels, and we can see a scrapped pirate level. This was totally reused for Sonic and the Secret Rings. There are 2 storyboards that are public, one for the opening and one for Team Dark's first cutscene. At the end of the storyboard for the opening, we can see a very early version of the logo. Sonic Heroes prototype opening was found with some CGI done, but most of it was just the storyboard. It also features a demo version of the main theme. You can tell the lyrics weren't made yet. There are a few pre-release screenshots for this game. There's a blurry screenshot of Team Chaotix and Sonic Seaside Hill with no objective, so maybe they weren't done with the Chaotix missions yet. There's this one of the Xbox version that has Power Plant, but the clouds are black for some reason. This screenshot of Hang Castle indicates that they were originally going to collect 181 keys instead of 10. Oh god. There are a few prototypes, but we'll be looking at 2 again. The E3 2003 version and prototype 10.8. The E3 build has a different title screen and it lets you choose between an easy mode and hard. Easy mode is Seaside Hill and hard mode is Rail Canyon. Seaside Hill has a few level design changes that are easier than the final version. There are no level ups, no somersault, the balloons are smaller, and there is a 10-minute timer to the stage meant for E3 purposes, and the collision is kinda jank sometimes. The victory screen is also very unfinished. As far as I know, Rail Canyon is pretty much the same. There are a few things in the game's file, like an early logo for the game and an early Sonic X logo for some reason. I guess it was because the anime was new at the time. Now let's look at the 10.8. The title screen is the same and the build is more completed. In the character select screen, they are just standing there, menacingly. All of the stages are here and all of the characters are playable. The voice language is in English, but the subtitles and text are in Japanese. Guess this was in the middle of the localization phase. The CG cutscenes are here, but it's missing sound effects and music. Metal Sonic's voice is even unfiltered.
All living things kneel before your master.
The Sonic has finally transformed!
That's Metal Sonic?
Super Hard Mode is automatically unlocked, but it is completely unfinished. There are more prototypes of this game, but the rest are small demos with very small changes. There's also a demo that was bundled in with Mario Kart Double Dash. Not to get confused with the cancelled Saturn game, Sonic X-treme. Sonic X-treme was going to be a skateboarding game similar to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. It was being developed by Visionscape, who previously worked on Sonic Heroes Cutscene. It was set to release in 2003 on the Microsoft Xbox. Visionscape showed it off to Yuji Naka, who was at the time the head of Sonic Team, and he was very impressed. Visionscape submitted it to Sega, but they never got a response, which caused the game to get cancelled. In 2011, some gameplay footage was released on YouTube. From the looks of the game, it looks alright. This later inspired Sonic Team to make Sonic Riders. Shadow the Hedgehog game was made because Sega wanted to expand on Shadow's backstory and wanted a game to appeal to more mature audiences who liked Call of Duty. This game is dumb. There are no public prototypes at the time of this recording, and all we know for unused content is that the game had blood, but in the final version they changed the blood to green. The game was going to have even more swearing than it already has, and the E3 demo showed Maria's death scene uncensored while the final version just fades to white. This game was also originally going to be rated T for teen, but mid-development, the ESRB released the E10 rating, so Sega made the game less mature. Sonic was even going to be playable in the multiplayer mode of this game, but of course we can't have Sonic using guns, so they removed them. That's pretty much it. There's more unused content, but none of it's really interesting except for this hilarious commercial made for the game.
Let me M-Flow loves Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow the Hedgehog 12月15日
In 2005, Climax Studio pitched a new Sonic game to Sega for the PSP called Sonic in the Shadow World. This one is weird. The story is about Shadow being from some realm called the Shadow World, which the game would take place in. The world would be dark with lava which Sonic has to escape from. You can tell that Climax Studios didn't know much about Shadow. Shadow does not come from some evil dark world or whatever. He was created by a scientist, and if you count Shadow the Hedgehog canon, Black Doom. This game would have you fight against demons and monsters instead of robots. Sonic and Shadow would be the only playable characters in this, and the gameplay style was never described. As I am envisioning this in my head, I'm thinking it would have been a Sonic Rivals type game without the racing. After the disaster that was Shadow the Hedgehog in 2005, Sega needed to reboot the series because Shadow kinda ruined the continuity. Plus, Sonic's 15th anniversary was coming up. Sonic Team wanted to make an ambitious project, and the next console generation was coming up. In 2005, Sega started work on the next Sonic game meant for the new-gen consoles, the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Wii. Yes, there was a Wii version of Sonic 06 planned. Of course, the Wii couldn't handle the game, so they made a completely different game known as Sonic and the Secret Rings for it. This was terrible because this was during mid-development. They had to split their team in half while making their big-budget, potentially record-breaking Sonic game. And this is where everything turned to crap. Yuji Naka left Sega out of frustration with the development of this game, making Takashi Iizuka to be the lead of Sonic Team. Sonic 06 was first shown off at Tokyo Game Show 2005. There was a CG trailer that looked pretty good and even suggested that Super Sonic was going to be playable. There was also a little alpha demo played behind doors. Thankfully, someone was able to show it off, and the stage is Kingdom Valley. Sonic looks a bit different here with this different idle animation, and the game looked much slower. It looks like there was also planned to be a day and night cycle for the game, which would have been cool. For the most part, Kingdom Valley's level design looks the same. I noticed that the camera looks so zoomed in for some reason. The level ends at the halfway point of the first section. Sonic has a different victory animation, and the Sonic Adventure 2 victory theme plays. This demo is really interesting, and I would like to play it someday. Of course, it will most likely never get leaked since this is just a simple tech demo, but whatever. There's more gameplay footage showing off the graphics and multiple details about the game. The next gameplay footage we have is from E3 2006, and it's Kingdom Valley again. The game is way way faster, and Sonic was able to rapid homing attack. He also has different homing attack animations which look pretty smooth. Wonder why they removed it from the final game. And this demo, after the first section of Kingdom Valley, it takes you straight to the Mach Speed section. I guess the other parts weren't done yet. There is another playable character in this build, which is the newcomer Silver the Hedgehog. You get to play as him in Crisis City, and he looks faster here than the final version. Crisis City ends earlier in this. From the looks of the gameplay, it looks like it would have been way more fun. I mean, Sonic and Silver is faster, there's rapid homing attack, and Sonic just looks like he controlled way smoother. From here on, all the demos they've showed have just been the same two stages: Kingdom Valley and Crisis City. There are a few trailers though. The E3 trailer shows more about the story and Shadow as a playable character. This trailer also has an early version of the game's theme, His World. This version was later used in the Super Smash Bros. Games. The game was set for a holiday 2006 release for the Xbox 360. Microsoft did a pretty good job at promoting the game because this was one of the big games to release on the Xbox in the holiday season. But we know the story: Sonic 06 was rushed, full of bugs, blah blah blah. It's already been beaten like a dead horse. Oh, I forgot to talk about Silver. Yeah, there's a few early designs for Silver. His name was originally going to be Venice, based after a real place in Italy called Venice. He was going to be a mink, but they eventually turned him into a hedgehog. His beta designs look pretty good, but of course, the final design is the best. Because this game was rushed, there is a lot of unused stuff in the files. I'm not going to go over every unused thing in the game because we'll be here all day, but I'll talk about the most interesting things. Super Sonic was meant to be a playable character. Sonic 06 has this thing called gems, and there was going to be a rainbow gem which allowed you to turn soup. This would have been absolutely awesome, but at least you can do it in Project 06. Unused code indicates that Metal Sonic was going to be in the game, similar to Sonic Adventure DX. There might have been an alternate ending to the game because in the Xbox version, after completing the game, you will get an achievement that says Night of the Chronos. The description reads, unlock the complete ending to the last hidden story. This got people to think that the game was going to have multiple endings. That would have been interesting. But yeah, this game development was pretty unfortunate. This would have been one of the best Sonic games or even one of the best games on the Xbox 360. What could have been? Sonic Awakening is an unreleased game in development between 2006 through 2009. Nothing at all is known about the game other than Silver was going to be in it. This was found on Silver's voice actor Pete Campella's resume. It being on the resume means it was far enough into development for voice work to be done. Some fans suggest that this would have been a standalone Silver the Hedgehog game or a sequel to Sonic 06. Sonic 06 sold well, but the game reviewed poorly, which is why Awakening was cancelled. Yes, Sonic Adventure 3 was in development at some point. This game was cancelled twice now. It was going to be made after Sonic 06, but Adventure 3 was cancelled, probably the same reason as Sonic Awakening. And the second time, it was meant to be made depending on how well Sonic Forces of all things did. What? There was also Adventure remakes planned in 2014 through 2015, but Sonic Boom made Sega lose tons of money, so they had to scrap it. Wow. Just wow. So you're telling me we got robbed just because how bad the other games were? You gotta be kidding me. There is speculation that Sonic Adventure 3 eventually turned into Sonic Unleashed. Speaking of Sonic Unleashed, After the failure that was Sonic 06, Sega needed to do something quick to keep the franchise alive. I personally don't think Sonic 06 is that bad, but I can't deny that this game almost killed the franchise. Sonic is special because no other franchise would have survived something like this. In 2006, Sonic Team started development on their next project, Sonic World Adventure, on a new engine called the Hedgehog engine. It was set to be released on the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Wii, and PlayStation 2. It was meant to be an apology to the fans and Sonic's grand return to form. But of course, there's always a catch. The Werehog. I like the Werehog, but people at the time didn't. The Werehog was heavily inspired by action games that were popular at the time, such as Devil May Cry and God of War. Sonic Unleashed was leaked on the internet on March of 2008 before any official reveal of the short tech demo trailer and these screenshots. The leaked gameplay footage looked very rough, and there are even more frame drops in the final game. There's lots of pop-in too. Sonic's boost was clear instead of blue, and he had some Sonic Rush animations. The jump animation was very similar to Sonic 06. The enemies ragdoll after hitting them, and they sometimes T-pose. Now compare this trailer to the final game that released 8 months later. See, the trailer looks terrible compared to the final version. Let this be a lesson. Just because an early build of a game looks very rough doesn't mean the game is going to be bad or they need to delay it. A lot can happen in a few months, and it's definitely enough time to polish up a game. Anyway, later that year at E3, they showed off more gameplay and it looks more close to the final game. This was 4 months after their leaked trailer. Although, the lighting kinda reminds me of the Wii version a bit. In the gameplay, they confirmed this is an alpha build and there is tons of frame rate issues. If you listen closely, Sonic uses his voice clips from Sonic Riders. The stage they showed off first was Windmill Owl, which the level design didn't change much. The title screen looks way much different here, and the loading screen here is different too. Next stage they showed off was Trinon, which doesn't look much different, and next they showcased the Werehog. The HUD is way different than the final version, and Werehog's textures are very low quality. The build they showcased isn't too different from the final version, other than small differences I'm just noticing. Also, in this showcase, the guy in the video said Knuckles and Shadow were going to make an appearance in the game. Maybe they were planned, or he was just saying that to hype people up. There is a preview build of this game, which is more or less the same as the E3 build. A test stage is in the preview build, which is an early layout of Savannah Citadel, but that's about it. There's also this work in progress version of the main menu, and there is this stage called Orange Roofs, which I'm guessing is an early name for Rooftop Run. A few early Werehog transformations and detransformations were found, which are slightly different from the final. There's also some more footage of Beta Rooftop Run, and in the video, you can see a shield capsule taken straight from Sonic 06. Also, I would like to talk about how the Wii trailer for this game is literally false advertising. They're using PS3/360 footage, but the Wii version is a completely different game. Just imagine being a kid watching this trailer, seeing how cool the graphics look, but when you finally get the game on your Wii, it's just this. But yeah, there's not much unused stuff in the game other than these early stage names, which are just the real names of the places they are based on. The story goes that Sonic Colors was initially planned to be Sonic Generations, but because of the Wii not being able to handle it, they made Sonic Colors instead. There's not a whole lot to go over in terms of unused content and all, and there's no prototypes, but I'll go over what was unused. There are some unused Sonic Unleashed animations, which Colors and Unleashed share the same skeleton structure and textures on the model. But since Colors was not built from Unleashed, this indicates that these moves were planned to return. There is an E3 demo of this game, but nothing changed aside from a few missing sound clips and an announcer not calling out the Wisp names. Instead of the game being 6 acts, there were originally going to be 3. This can still be seen in the final game, since on some stages, you can literally see the next act at the end of the stage. I'm guessing it was split into 6 to make the game longer. After the deal with 4Kids ended in 2009, Sega had to hire new voice actors for the cast. Ryan Drummond, who voiced Sonic from 1999 through 2004, was originally going to reprise his role as Sonic. This didn't happen because Sega reached out to him and told him he had to leave his union, which is how he makes a living, in order to voice Sonic. Of course, Mr. Drummond couldn't do this, so he had to reject the offer. He described it as a real slap in the face, and instead we got Roger Craig Smith, the current voice of Sonic, to take the role. Look, I love Roger Craig Smith as Sonic, but it would have been absolutely amazing for Ryan Drummond to come back. He is, in my opinion, the definitive voice for Sonic. Sonic Generations started development in 2009 under the name Sonic Anniversary, since Sonic's 20th anniversary was coming up. I covered this in my Sonic Colors DS video, but this game was meant to release on Xbox 360, Wii, DS, and PSP. PSP version of this game was found, but it was damaged so you can't play it. However, we can see what's inside the files. What's inside is a recreation of Mushroom Hill Zone from Sonic & Knuckles, and an early version of the logo. There's also an early version of the Green Hill Zone theme that was also found, but with the disc being damaged, we can't hear it. This PSP version most likely became the 3DS version, and the Wii version, of course, became Sonic Colors, while the DS version became Sonic Colors DS. Anyway, just like Colors, there's not much unused things that went unused, and there are no public prototypes. The E3 demo uses Colors and Unleashed voice clips and has slightly different music. There was a 20-day demo released for the game on Sonic's birthday, which of course you can't play anymore. This demo has a few differences, like classic Sonic having Sonic 4 physics. Glad they changed that. And a hacker was able to find some stuff in the game's files while it was still available. Just some unused graphics and some Unleashed leftovers. There's also some Sonic 1 Eggman and Sonic sprites found in the game, which could have been used for an early loading screen. There's this unused boost gauge for classic and modern Sonic meant for the final Time Eater boss. There's also a foot sweep move in the game's code and some unused kick time events, but these are definitely leftovers from Unleashed. There's some unused music in the game too, and there's interestingly one that's for if modern Sonic grabs invincibility. This can never be heard in games since Sonic never gets invincibility. This can never be heard in games since modern Sonic never gets invincibility. This was used in a 3DS version though. There's also music planned to be used for the Time Break power-up, and it's a remix of Cybertrack from Sonic Advance. This song actually goes hard, and I wish it was used in the final game. Here's the thing that most people don't know. This game was gonna feature a third Sonic, which is Dreamcast Sonic. You know, Adventure Sonic. He was going to represent the GameCube era of stages in the game. I guess Sega thought just 2 Sonics were enough. Classic Sonic was originally going to have a voice, and Jaleel White, who voiced Sonic in the Sonic Side IM cartoons, was going to return to voice Classic Sonic. Sega couldn't get in contact with him, so they kept Classic Sonic completely mute. Okay, you might be wondering, what the heck am I talking about? Do you mean Sonic Lego Dimensions? No, I don't know if this should count as a cancelled Sonic game or just some rumor, but I remember hearing about this game everywhere. In 2011, Sonic Dimensions was supposedly a cancelled game that was set to release in 2012. It was going to be about different versions of Sonic from other dimensions with their own personalities. A red Sonic, a yellow Sonic, a green Sonic, and I think a purple Sonic or whatever. It was planned to be a sequel to both Sonic Colors and Generations and was going to release on the Nintendo Wii U. Nintendo was apparently working on this game too. It was going to be a 4-player multiplayer game that takes advantage of the Wii U's gamepad's capabilities. This is weird, and I am not gonna lie, this sounds a bit like Sonic Lost World. The whole Wii U exclusive game, different colored persons with different personalities, and Nintendo helped making the game. Who knows, this game probably turned into Lost World. I remember this rumor very well. Back in 2014, during the Great Sonic Drought, rumors about a new Sonic project surfaced on the internet. This was all because of Orbot's German voice actor posted a new voicing role for a game called Sonic Mach 2. It was set to release in 2015. When Izuku was asked about this on Facebook, he said, "It's not being developed by us," which made people believe that this was not being made by Sonic Team. To be honest, I think Sonic Mach 2 was probably a working title for the mobile game, Sonic Runners, except that Runners is made by Sonic Team. But here's the real question, where's Sonic Mach 1? After the embarrassing disgrace known as Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric and Shattered Crystal in 2014, Sonic became a joke to the gaming media again, so Sega needed to do something quick. They got Headcanon and Christian Whitehead, who previously worked on the Sonic 1, 2, and CD remasters, to make this new game for Sonic's 25th anniversary. Sonic Discovery started development in 2015 on the Retro engine. Yes, Sonic Mania was originally called Sonic Discovery. There's even some unused logos for the game found in the game's files. The game was officially revealed to the public in 2016 at Sonic's 25th anniversary. Later, there was a playable demo on September 2016 at PAX East with 2 zones, Green Hill Zone and Studiopolis. There's tiny differences like less objects, spikes not properly layered, no special stages here, and no water in Green Hill Zone. The E3 2017 demo doesn't have much differences aside from Mirage Saloon now being playable. In the 2016 demos, if you wait for a while, just like in Sonic CD, Sonic would say, "I'm out of here," and jump off screen, causing a game over. Dang, I wish this wasn't removed from the final version. That would have been such a nice callback. Every other demo from here on doesn't have any differences, so let's just move on to the unused stuff. Angel Island was meant to be a fully playable stage, but was shortened for some reason. That would have been really nice. There are some 3D models. One for a Death Egg robot who was meant to appear in Titanic Monarch Zone, and an early 3D Sonic model straight from Sonic Jam that was going to be used for the special stages. There's some leftover graphics from the demos that say coming 2017 or thanks for playing. There's an unused object that was meant for Studiopolis Zone called Love Tester. If you jump into it, it's a slot machine. I don't know what it would have done since it doesn't work, but cool. An early version of Press Garden Zone from a poster was found at a Sega meeting. Egg Reverie might have been a full stage instead of just a boss judging by these unused graphics that has slopes. Speaking of Egg Reverie, there was an unused song in the game for the stage that was meant to be the pinch mode. This was probably going to be used if you were low on rings or a second phase for the boss. There's a lot of unused graphics here, so I'm not going to go over everything, but that's most of the things that went unused. Ah yes, Sonic Forces, my favorite. Sonic Forces started development in 2013, shortly after the release of Sonic Lost. It went under the name Sonic Wars. Sonic Team wanted this game to appeal to all fans of the series. During this phase of development, Sonic Team was mostly working on concept art and their new engine, Hedgehog Engine 2. Real game development didn't start until 2016, shortly after they revealed it at the Sonic 25th anniversary party. At this time, it was known as Project Sonic 2017. Not much is known about the development of this game, and there are no prototypes, but there is this screenshot found in the game's files of an early version of the game. The lighting is different, there is no fire, and the HUD is slightly different. On the bottom left, you can see the avatar HUD as well. It has a trophy, a gun, and a gear. Maybe you were able to switch between Sonic and the avatar instead of just tag team. The game was playable at E3, but there are no differences aside from the victory theme. The March 2017 South by Southwest showcase has a few differences. No HUD, Sonic was a darker shade of blue, there was more fire around the stage, and an early version of the game's main theme, Fist Bump, can be heard. This version doesn't have lyrics yet, and instead used guitars to help the vocalist with how the vocals should sound. Honestly, this version sounds a lot better than the final version. There's a whole entire leak early script for the game, both in English and Japanese. The story mostly stayed the same, but for the English dialogue, former Sonic social media manager Aaron Weber made a few comments about how bad the English dialogue was. Seriously, it's hilarious. The story was originally going to feature Mephiles from Sonic 06 to be one of the main villains, but Sega remembered that Sonic 06 is not canon, so he can't be used in the story. Honestly, when I first saw Infinite in the first trailer they showed him in, I thought it was Mephiles. There's a few unused stage layouts, and Sunset Heights, Park Avenue, and Red Bridge Gate were originally going to be one big stage that leads to the Metal Sonic boss. These stages were later split up because I'm guessing they wanted to make the game longer. It's only like a 3-hour game. Sunset Heights honestly had a better level design than the beta version. The beginning part of Null Space was going to be a bit longer instead of like 5 seconds. Motar Canyon also had an early layout which is incredibly hard for some reason. Guess it was scrapped because it would have been a random difficulty spike. There are some unused voice clips in the game, and it looks like the game was originally going to have a narrator who sounds like a ripoff of the Dragon Ball Z narrator.
With Sonic defeated, Eggman's army quickly took over. Within months, all but a few isolated areas in the world were under their control. Despite the overwhelming odds, a ragtag resistance formed, banding together to continue the fight. And now, a new face prepares to join the struggle.
In the game's files, there is all types of VR stuff found in it. I guess this game was going to have a VR mode. There's also this screenshot of the CG trailer that just says dummy. There's some leftover Generations animations, which I guess means this game was built off of Generations. And this is just speculation, but it is possible that Boom Sonic was originally planned to be the third playable character instead of the avatar. The grappling hook is like the inner beam, but this is just speculation from the fans. Well, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much most of the early builds and unused content in the mainline Sonic games. If you made it this far into the video, thank you very much. I've worked very hard on this one. This is the longest video I've made, and I hope you guys learned some things from this video, because I sure did. Like, it was pretty fun to make. But anyway, make sure you guys subscribe and leave a like to support the channel. We're trying to reach 3,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And see you guys later. Goodbye.